Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Celtic Ways YouTube channel. My name is Ryan McGinlay at the Ryan McGinlay, and today I'm joined by my very special guest. He's usually here for the briefings, but today we're doing a bit of a sit down with Anthony Haggerty, Haggerty 10. And Tony, I was going to call you Anthony there. Tony, how are you
Sunday
doing
name.
today?
I'm very well. Give me my Sunday name. My
That's
mother
it.
would love that.
Thank you very much for joining me. And today we're going to be talking about Tony's magnificent 7 top Celtic memories of being a Celtic fan and a Celtic journalist as well. So yeah, a wee bit of a deep dive into your history of supporting Celtic and all the things that you've experienced in your time as a Celtic supporter and as a journalist as well. You're looking forward to getting into it?
It's very hard to encapsulate one's life and break it down into specific moments. But I've tried hard here. It's you know yourself from supporting this club. Supporting Celtic's just a way of life. Your mood can be determined by the fortunes of this wonderful institution and football club. And I thank my father for introducing me to this football club at a very early age. And I'm trying to sort of. I would say this is my top 7, but and I don't just. It's not like top 7 matches. They're just moments in my life that mean a lot to me and that are intrinsically linked to this football club. So through both professional and a fan capacity, So we'll have a. Well, hopefully people enjoy it, Ryan. I hope you enjoy it as well. So if you've heard some of these stuff before or maybe hear it for the first time, so hope it's all good to you.
Yeah, it's a wee bit of an education for me as the host as well, because I'll be able to hear, because I wasn't around for some of these
Some of it,
games that we're going
yeah.
to talk about. Just before we get started, I know you gave me a list of the seven best moments for you, but do you have any honourable mentions that haven't made it onto the list?
Oh goodness, honourable
Sorry,
mention.
I've put you on the spot here.
Well, I guess my first experience of a Rangers game at Ibrox was that classic 4-each game, which you might have seen because Scott Sport captured it. And my father reminded me that not all games were going to be like that. It was a rip-roaring, free-scoring, never boring kind of match. Celtic were 2-0 up, 3-1 up. Rangers came back 4-3. Murdo McLeod scored a screamer. So that, in terms of going to Ibrox for a first ever experience of Glasgow Derby in the away end. I was in the actual main stand. Celtic used to get the main stand, the Broom one, and a bit of the Govan stand. Tells you how long ago it was. 86 it was. So that was an honourable mention. Obviously some title wins and memories of watching Kenny Dalglish. That's my first kind of memories of watching Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
But they never made the kind of countdown only because I was really young when he left. And then there was obviously some Charlie Nicholas memories. I waited years to see a Charlie Nicholas goal at Ibrox, and he scored a volley 2-0 game in the 90s, and a kind of rare win, but it was kind of another treasured memory because I adored Charlie Nicholas as a player when I was a kid, so stuff like that. But there's umpteen. If you could break it down into matches, then it would be kind of, it was, you would have a hard task. That the Martin O'Neill era, I don't think there was anything not to enjoy during the whole Martin O'Neill era, So I would have to really sit down and think about that in terms of what didn't make the cut. But just off the top of my head, those are a few memories that I can say.
So shall we get started into your
We
magnificent 7?
shall.
Starting off with number 7, one that you've given me is the centenary season of 1988, the League Cup double under Billy McNeill. What do you want to talk about with regards to that season? Obviously, I wasn't about. I was about
Well,
minus 10 years old at that point. So yeah, what would you like to talk about that? What's your memories of that?
Well, what I'd like to start off by saying, I kind of started there. My father, I started supporting Celtic in the most unlikeliest of places. It was Shawfield. My dad took me to see Craig Brown's Clyde, season 76-77, Ken Dalglish's last season, and he didn't want me growing up a bigot, call it what you like. And we were at Shawfield and a roar went up from Celtic. You could hear it. And I turned to my dad and I said, has Kenny Dalglish scored for Celtic? Do you think Celtic are winning? Needless to say, we went to see Celtic from then on in. But my father ran an amateur team for years and they played on a Saturday. So I would only ever go to see Celtic in midweek games, European games, that kind of thing, because I always followed my dad's team on a Saturday and I was too young to go myself. So by the time I was like 12, 13, 14, I was starting to go myself on a supporters bus. My dad was still running the team, but the team folded like 86. So what was that? Would that make me 14? And so the two of us, from that season onwards, we got on the supporters bus, the Kilbride supporters bus, and it ran from East Kilbride, and then I got on with my dad, and then there was a few guys from school that used to go on the bus. So 86, 87 was my first experience of like going regularly. It just felt great. It was the best feeling in the world. I was with my dad, I was with my pals, I was watching Celtic. Saturdays couldn't come quick enough, but all through my childhood, I would go to see all the European games. So there was that great time in the 80s when Celtic played at Real Madrid in 80, Ajax in 80, I think 82, and played Juventus in 81. So I was at all those matches growing up, going to see my dad's amateur team on a Saturday. So come 86, I was 14. My dad was like, right, let's do it. Let's go and watch Celtic religiously. And that was just the best feeling ever. So 86, 87, not a great year. As soon as it came into Ibrox, Rangers won the title. And I remember being at that Falkirk game when Celtic lost the title, and fans were throwing scarves at Davy Hay, and it was all bedlam. So when Davy Hay left in the summer of 87, it was like 87, 88, the centenary season, that's when I started to kind of say to my dad, right, I'm going to go with my pals, and I still went along with him, but I'd go with my pals and go to the jungle, and he would always be like the old jungle terracing, and he would always say to me, oh, watch yourself in the jungle, but loved it. And I'm proud to say to this day, Ryan, that I was at every match in the centenary season. I didn't miss a fixture home and away. And it's just that it's something that's lived with me. And the reason it lives with me is because I went with my father and also went with my pals from school who remain my pals to this day. So we're still tight. There's about a group, about 4 or 5 of us who went on the bus. A guy called John McLaughlin, a guy called Raymond Reid, Grant Sargent. These guys still my friends to this day. We still meet in the pub. We're still, so that's what, 30 odd year ago, isn't it? 35 years ago. And we were 16. Well, yeah. So 87, 88, yeah. So 15, 16, doing my O grades at school. I even got a letter home from my French teacher who said to my mum and dad that did they know that I was in Aberdeen one day because it was an evening game at Pittodrie. And my father wrote back saying, yeah, he knew because he took me. So it's just like, and the French teacher wasn't chuffed at that I was missing French, afternoon French of a Wednesday to go and watch Celtic. But it was your life. Everything revolved around Celtic, and Celtic won a League and Cup double. There's that famous kind of team that never gave up. The We Never Stop. That was long before Ange Celtic had a We Never Stop actually in the centenary season. Lots of last minute goals. Joe Miller's last minute goal, Boxing Day, Tannadice, still not seen it, fell down the stairs, massive big sway crush. No footage exists of it to this day, but I'm assured that and the celebrations were wild. Paul McStay scored a last minute goal against Hearts. Paul McStay was immense that season. You'll have seen the clips with the pivot and the swivel in the centre circle, the ball through to Chris Morris, who's McAvenny, the 2 goals in the New Year game. Just everything about it clicked into place. And life was wonderful that year. It was just me, my dad, my friends, and there was so many moments in that centenary season. 2 goals in the last couple of minutes. Scottish Cup semi-final against Hearts, Mark McGee and Andy Walker, which contributed to Billy McNeil saying there's a fairy tale about this club. And there was a fairy tale about the club. Celtic the musical was on. Wildcat production, Dave Anderson, who's an old Scottish actor. And everything about that season was terrific. It was a wonderful celebration of everything that was Celtic. And every night on the stage show, they would have somebody come out with a European Cup, a Bertie Auld, a Lisbon Lion, or somebody. And it was just a wonderful season in Celtic's history because everybody who was involved in it fondly remembers it. And I urge you after this, if you've not seen it before, Scott Sport did a tribute. The wonderful Ian Archer wrote a tribute to Celtic. It was called In Praise of Caesar, and there's a beautiful musical montage about it in the middle of it, and they focus on an Ibrox game when Paul McStay and Andy Walker scored as well. It's tremendous, and Ian Archer ended with the line, "They say the joy's gone out of the beautiful game, It's no longer the game it once was, but they weren't at Parkhead yesterday. And on the day, it was Bonner, Morris, Rogan, and he named the team, and he said they've come a long way in 100 years. There's one thing for certain, the next century, we will see their likes again. And it was just it was astonishingly brilliant. And I remember thinking, wow, those kind of words hit me. And I remember thinking, I knew long ago that I wanted to be like Ian Archer or Arthur Montford. I wanted to be a journalist, so I kind of channeled all my energy. And I still think to this day, I'm still aspiring to write something as good as that from the centenary season by Ian Archer. Even just thinking about it, I get kind of emotional because I think of all the things that me and my friends did that year. And it was a seminal moment in your life. You know, you were 16 growing up, and I passed all my O grades as well, thankfully. So I was just, I just look back at that season fondly. It's the only season where I was at every game home and away. The rest were for either professional reasons or just you miss a game because you couldn't get a ticket or whatever, these kind of things. But that season we were there, 6 o'clock in the morning, public sales for big matches, standing outside Parkhead, waiting for the turnstile to open at like 12 or 1 o'clock, and then you would go in and see the match that day, but you were there from 6 in the morning, getting the corporation bus down to Celtic Park, that kind of thing, when those kind of things were in vogue. And topped off by the winning the Scottish Cup, the League and Cup double, was it was magical, absolutely magical. So that was my kind of first season of, not my first season, but first season where I went every game home and away, and I felt like a true supporter. I was a bona fide Celtic fan. You know what I mean? So, in my eyes.
Yeah, to all the viewers watching, this is number 7 on Tony's list. So we'll be here for the rest of the day when he's talking about number 1. Do you feel do you get that sense of nostalgia looking back on that season, especially? And is there a sort of mystique to it because it was Billy McNeill? It's 2 eras coming together. You've got your Charlie Nicholases and you've got Andy Walker, but you've also got the European Cup winning captain in charge of the Celtic team. Does that come into your mind when you think about that?
I think it was just fated, wasn't it? Graham Souness came in and the whole Souness revolution and all that, and everything was about Rangers, wasn't it? Billy McNeill came in, he signed Chris Morris, he signed Andy Walker, he signed Mick McCarthy, he signed Billy Stark, and people were like, how are they going to stop this Rangers juggernaut? But stopped them. And I think it was Tommy Craig who said in that kind of Scott Sport documentary, the vital spark that Celtic needed was there with the centenary season. And Mick McCarthy, I did a big interview with Mick McCarthy not that long ago for the Celtic Way, and he said, and he said it started the day of the photo shoot because somebody joked, where's the trophies? And somebody said, they're at Ibrox, and Billy McNeill went off his nut, seemingly. He's like, well, they shouldn't be at Ibrox. Expletive. And Mick McCarthy was like, wow. He knew exactly what he'd walked into. This club was 100 years old. He said, you just couldn't let that support down that season. And they conceded very few goals that season, the Celtic defence. And the amount of last-minute goals is it's astonishing if you check back the records. And there was a great Hugh McIlvanney. William McIlvanney was the journalist. Hugh McIlvanney, or was it the other way around? One of the McIlvanney brothers, I can't remember which one, because one's a journalist, one's a writer anyway, they're both writers, but one of them was standing in the jungle interviewing Billy Connolly for a programme, and it was brilliant. Billy Connolly was waxing lyrical about Celtic. He was saying the centenary season, he says, the last minute stuff, he says, there was guys saying, hold on, there's a minute and a half to go, we'll win this. And that was the kind of, have you maybe seen that clip? And
is it when Billy Connolly says this is a new thing?
Aye, this is a new thing. Yeah, you've seen the clip. Yeah. This is a new thing. Aye, and he started talking about it was the manifestation of don't let go. The game last 90 minutes. He's saying guys are turning to pals. Couple of minutes to go here. We'll score. And in that season, they tended to do that. There's so many last minute goals. That's what drove them on. It was that whole centenary thing and wanting to beat Graham Souness's Rangers, who were signing all on Sunday. And in terms of achievements, it's a brilliant achievement. I mean, absolutely brilliant and quite rightly lauded. And also with the whole kind of musical stage play and all that. They mocked up the players, the current day players, and put them in the kit from 100 years ago. And that Scott Sport montage played out to a musical background, and the kind of current photo turned into the photo from 100 years ago with the brill creamed hair and the fake moustaches and all that. It was brilliantly done. In Praise of Caesar, it's called, for anyone that's want to YouTube it if you haven't seen it and you're maybe too young to remember it. You'll love it. It's about 35 minutes long, and it'll make you cry. I think, Ryan, I'm holding it in here because everything about that season, I loved it, and I loved the fact that I shared it with people that were close to me, my dad and my friends. I think that's the wonderful thing about Celtic. You meet so many people, and you get to share highs, you get to share the lows as well. But it is, I mean, they can say what they like, but it is a family, and it's a family like no other.
Yeah, and just going from number 7 then on to number 6, there's a 10-year gap between it, 1988 to 1998. So you talk about the 90s. The 90s were a bit of a dark period in Celtic's history, but towards the end of it, they came up trumps. Number 6 on your list is shattering 10 in a row for Rangers.
Yeah, do you know why, Ryan? Because I did Mulgrades, as I said, in 1988. See, when Celtic next won the title, I'd been through uni, and I was at my first job as a journalist working for the Paisley Gazette, it was called, but as I renamed it the Paisley Gazzetta della Sport, because Italian football was big and all that, So, but I'd been through my whole kind of adulthood, and I watched this rampant Rangers team destroy everybody in Scottish football, and and it was lean. And at that point, I got a job I went to Strathclyde Uni 91 to 95, and also 96 to 97. I went back to do a postgrad in journalism, but I did a degree in English and politics, and had to get a job as well. So I had a part-time job in C&A in East Kilbride, so that curtailed my Celtic watching activities as well. I was usually good to try and get my shifts 9:30, 1:30 to go to Ibrox and Rangers games and stuff like that. But it really tested your mettle as a supporter in terms of your commitment to the cause, and it was really, really lean. And although it never leaves you, anyone who lived through those years will tell you grim wasn't the word. You were finishing 5th in the league and stuff like that, and not qualifying for Europe, and just a horrible, horrible time for the club. And so 98 was, as I said, I started my Celtic supporting in a strange place. The day that 10 in a row was shattered, I was also in a strange place. I wasn't at Celtic Park. I was at Love Street watching St Mirren play Dundee, and a end of season fair, I think the words would be used, Ryan, in the match report. St Mirren when it beat Dundee 1-0, and my heart, my body, my mind, and my soul were elsewhere. And my father and my brother had gone to Celtic Park without tickets, just on spec that they would get in. My dad's hero was Jock Stein, just end of Celtic wise, and he was beside himself that Rangers would eclipse the original 9 in a row. And I really did. I feared for my dad's health that year because I thought he was, he got himself worked into such a state. But he was okay when he was at matches because he was a captive audience, and so he could control himself. So what happens is that they get one ticket between them, and instead, and to this day, I've always chastised my brother for this. They tossed a coin for it. Now, my thoughts would be, if you're better inside the ground, you go and control yourself. But they tossed a coin. My father lost. My brother won. He grabbed the ticket, and away he went, Morecambe and Wisenut up the road. Bring me sunshine and dance. My dad's in the Parkhead Forge car park where McDonald's is, and he is like chewing the steering wheel, right? So Larson scores early doors, does nothing for his nerves because no, still too early. Bratback scores to make it 2-0, and he's told me he got out the car at the Parkhead Forge McDonald's and sunk to his knees, and he wasn't alone. About 50 other people were doing the same thing, kissing the tarmac, right, hugging each other, random strangers, greeting, getting off their head, like literally going wild. And that was the only time we relaxed during that. And I still cuss my brother, you know. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? You know, he was up to high dough. And my brother said, never thought. He said, I was being selfish. I said, yeah, you were being selfish. All the while, I'm at Love Street. I knew they were 1-0 up, and Rangers were beating Dundee United at Tannadice, so Celtic had to keep winning. And somebody turns to me and says, Brackback's just made it 2-0. I've sat in my hands, and I've just stared blankly into space, you know, not focused on the job at hand, what I'm meant to be doing, watching St Mirren Dundee. And I've just sat there. My insides are doing the Munch, Edvard Munch silent screaming like that. And so we've gone downstairs after to speak to managers and players at Dundee. Don't even know, couldn't tell you what they said. But this was a while after the events happened, and I walk into the car park at Love Street, and there's my dad and my brother leaning against the car, waiting on me, arms folded. So I walk towards them, and other journalists are coming out. Couldn't care less at this point. And I've ran towards them, and we've just jumped up. The three of us, we've done a mock huddle in the Love Street car, just like jumping around. I mean, like giving it wahoo. I mean, absolute big licks. Just a wonderful moment, you know, standing there with my brother and my dad. And I wrote this when Wim Jansen passed away. It was my tribute to Wim Jansen, and it was called To Wim Jansen, which was a headline. I wrote it in the Celtic way. And in a moment of clarity and ESP, the three of us have looked at each other and we've raised an imaginary glass and we went to Wim Jansen. And then we've just kind of jumped about and went mental again. And it just always sticks with me. And people were looking on. I think other journalists were looking on and commenting whatever they want, but people were looking on and just kind of looking at the three of us. And it was just, as I say, a private moment with me, my dad, my brother. And it just, it's something that I'll always cherish. But I always cherish those three words, To Wim Jansen. And it seemed so simple at the time, but when I look back now, it's as poignant as it gets, because he sadly passed away with dementia. But he won. He guided that Celtic team to the mother of all title wins. That you imagine the immense pressure that team was under, and I've spoken to members of that team: Mark Reaper, Tom Boyd, Jackie McNamara, Paul Lambert especially. Paul Lambert says there is not enough, in terms of homage and honour and display paid to Wim Jansen within the bills of Celtic Park, even though he was only there a year, him and Murdo McLeod, who guided the team. But what a year it was, and the whole history in Scottish football landscape could have changed had Rangers won 10 in a row, and that's immense pressure. And I saw what that pressure did to my dad as a supporter. I genuinely thought I might lose my dad that year, and it's something that stays with me forever. And I'm glad I didn't. He's still here, thankfully. But I can only imagine the immense pressure that team was under. Yet everybody says to a man that you speak to that Wim Jansen was cool, calmness personified. And Celtic lost their first two games that season to Hibs and Dunfermline. That was Henrik Larsson gave the ball away to Chick Charnley, and then lost at Celtic Park to Dunfermline. So they were 6 points. Well, they'd lost 6 points. They were behind the 8 ball right from the start, and people always remember the Burley and Lambert goals in the New Year game of 1998. Lambert and Burley game, as it's known, because there's a brand of cigarettes with a similar kind of name. But it just, I look back at that, and I was embarking at the start. That was my start of my professional career. Of the Paisley Gazette Daily Sport. Loved covering St Mirren. It was great fun. I did it for the Daily Record. Cover their games on a Saturday for the Record. So it was a Record that first gave me the opportunity to cover football matches, and I was indebted to them, but I established a rapport and a relationship with them. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth in terms of national newspaper writing. And yeah, it was, but that season just sticks out in the mind for everybody that lived through it. It was torture, absolute torture, but worth it for that. I think every Celtic supporter would have had a huddle with someone and being on the ground that day, you could have heard a pin drop at various intervals. But Harold Brackback was, a Norwegian striker that got slagged for missing a lot. Didn't miss when it mattered. And Henrik Larsson curled in a beauty. And you thought that when you were watching Henrik Larsson, in hindsight, knowing what you know now, that's just typical Henrik Larsson. But it was a beautiful goal from a beautiful striker who goes on to be the king of kings. But you don't know that then. But you just knew that he had something special in his locker that day. So, yeah, I think it's May the 2nd, isn't it? 1998, sorry. Harold Brackback Day, May Day, call it what you like. But it's the day, the men that stopped at 10 and to Wim Jansen, I think you would say, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know you mentioned Henrik Larsson there. I don't think this is the last time you're going to mention that name over the course of this list. He's a name that is just he's just so connected to Celtic. Even in the next sort of example that we've got in number 5 on your list is to do with Chris Sutton and the 6-2 game in 2000 under Martin O'Neill. Larsson scored 2 goals in that game. Sutton scored a brace as well. Petrov and Lambert with 1 each, respectively. What would you like to talk about with regards to this game?
I'll tell you what I will talk about prior to the game. Chris Sutton was rumoured to be signing for Celtic, and Jim Traynor, who was my boss, I'm going to talk about this professionally and then as a supporter of it. But Chris Sutton, so we got the wire that he was coming up to Glasgow. So Jim Traynor has said to me, stake out Celtic Park, Chris Sutton, don't come back if you don't get him, or words to that effect. Add your own expletive in that sentence. And I'm like, hey, he's like, just get yourself out to Celtic Park. Right, he's coming. You better be there. So if you miss him, end of. it's the 10th of July, right? My birthday's on the 11th of July, 2000. So the bottom line is, if I get Chris Sutton, I've got the back page of the Daily Record in my birthday in the millennium, right? I'll be 28 years old and I'm thinking, it's a big thing, don't let the man down, do your thing. So I'm standing there, I'm the only journalist there for like 2 or 3 hours, and I got a phone call from Martin Geisler, who worked at STV at the time. He says, where are you? I says, I can't tell you. And then he said to me, you're at Celtic Park, aren't you? So I was like, and I knew Martin from covering the Scottish Claymores, cracking guy, great relationship with him. He says to me, what are you waiting for? I says, I can't tell you. He says, I know what you're waiting for. He says, his agent's just phoned me. He's coming up in a car right now. He says, I'll be 10 minutes. He says, I'll see you. He says, he's going to speak to me. He says, but just put your tape in. He says, and you can have it. He says, because I'll only use a soundbite on the news, STV at night. He said, and then if he gets out the car and he speaks to you, that's yours. That's fine. So that duly happens. Chris Sutton pulls up with John Viola, who is his agent. Martin Geisler and I are standing. He rolls the window down. He speaks, and he says a few words, and then the car drives off. So I've sprinted and chased the car. Martin Geisler said, there you go. And you go. So I've chased the car, right? And Chris Sutton's came out the car, and I said, Chris, and unbeknown to me, I was young, stupid and naive. I said, Chris, you've been labelled a £10 million flop at Chelsea. Are you up here to sign for Celtic? And he's like, £10 million flop? He's like, in whose eyes? I was like, well, that's what people are saying about you and stuff like that. What, like you? he's looking at me as if, who are you? Right? And I'm like, oh, fair enough. You hear my dog in the background? Mm-hmm. I think the postman's came or something. But so I say, are you here to sign? And he hits me with this brilliant line. He says, I'm not here for a look around. And I'm like, all right, do you think you can beat Rangers? He says to me, I told you, I'm not here for a look around. He says, I've got stuff to do. He's like, if you're still here when I come out, I'll maybe speak to you then. And he disappears. So this is about, I've gone about 10 o'clock. This must be about 12, midday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He doesn't reappear till about 8, 9 at night. I've no left. I've had nothing to eat. I've gone nowhere. what goes in must come out, I'm thinking. But obviously there's various passage doors and Celtic use the blacked out mirrored cars and all that. So I'm thinking, here's hoping. So a variety of journalists have came and gone because they've asked me if I've seen them. I've said no, I've denied all knowledge. I can't give them what I've got because they're my words, and I'm thinking it's an exclusive for the newspaper. At least I learnt that much. And so I kind of standing there. So I think he emerged about 9 o'clock at night, right? And I'm still standing there. And he's like, he says, "You still here?" I says, "Yeah." He says, "What a shift you put in?" I says, "Yeah. And he says to me, he says, "What do you want to know?" I says, "Well, can you tell me everything?" He says, "Yeah, I've signed I think it was a 4 or 5 year deal." I says, do you think you can beat Rangers?" And he says, "Well, I told you I'm not here for a look around." He says, "I'm here to win trophies." He says, "Hope that Paddy," he says, "I hope to make Celtic a successful team under Martin O'Neill. I'm excited." And he gave me chapter and verse, and I was just like, "Wow, thanks very much." So I've gone back to the record and I've said to Jim, "I got him," and he's like, "You're learning, well done." So on the back page the next day, my birthday, July 11, 2000. Chris Sutton, "I'm here to tame Gers" was the headline. he never said that, and I never wrote that. That was the kind of like sandwich they took to the headline. Right? And I remember thinking, "Oh no, he didn't say that." He just said he was here to be successful and win trophies. And so I'm thinking, all right. And I don't know if he'd ever seen the headline or cared. So Celtic obviously start the season well. Sutton and Larsson score at Tannadice, beginning of a beautiful friendship. So we get to the August Derby game, and Jim Traynor turns to me and says on the Friday before it, he says, "As a reward for your Sutton piece and all that," he says, "you're covering the game alongside me and Keith Jackson. I think David McCarthy was there as well." And I'm like, "What, the Celtic Rangers game?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "You've never done a Celtic Rangers game before, have you?" And I went, "No." He went, "Well," he said, you're coming with us. You're part of the team on Sunday." I think it was a Sunday. So I was like, "Oh, wow." So this is a Friday, so I'm not sleeping for the whole weekend, right? So we get to the game, obviously do things. So I have to do the man-by-man ratings for both teams. And then if Celtic win, I have to do the player that comes in for Celtic. No problem. So Celtic win 6-2, eh? And I sat there the whole game like not a whimper, nothing, no expression. Again, my insides are they're jumping about with the supporters. This is incredible, right? First ever Derby game as a reporter, and Celtic are pumping Rangers 6-2. You're just like, what do you say to that? What do you do? So, but because I was so kind of nervous and kind of wound up and just wanted to do a good job, I kept it together in a professional capacity as you would, So I do the man by man, just submit them. I go downstairs. The player that comes in is Chris Sutton. So I'm kind of thinking away at the front, and I don't know why, but he just kind of looks and he goes and nods like that, as if, "All right, wee man." I'm just like, "All right, Chris." And it's just like, and everybody's like, as if, "Do you know him?" And it was only for, he just recognised you from standing on the stakeout, So yeah, and so he said hello. So he's spoken, and I've written a big spread. It's called a spread in the newspaper, national newspaper, 1,000 words or more. And I'm so chuffed. And I've gone home and I've gone to the Boozer at night. And I've met my dad and I've met a few of my pals. And in the Boozers at night on a Sunday night, the early editions of the newspapers would come round, eh? So, and I've given it the big build up. I spoke to Chris Sutton and I was just so chuffed and want to tell him that it would listen. And I've opened the first edition of the newspaper, and my name wasn't on the Chris Sutton stuff. And I nearly cried, that way. And I'm just like, oh, God, and I was sick to the pit of my stomach. So I phoned Keith Jackson, and it's just, I don't know why, I just got really perturbed and annoyed about it. I phoned Keith Jackson, and Keith Jackson said, "I'm on it. I've told them." He said, "What a liberty that is." I said, oh, you know, he said, yeah, your name on the Chris Sutton stuff. I said, yeah. I said, all right, great, thank you. He said, it'll not happen again. He said, just a mistake. You know, somebody just forgot, or he said, maybe because it was yourself, didn't realise you were there, you know. And I said, okay, fair enough. And sure enough, it was rectified by the morning, and all the kind of the Streets edition sells. I don't know how many it sells, but in the morning, the editions that everybody picked up, you know, was my name was on the Chris Sutton story, and I reminded Chris Sutton of that when he became a Daily Record columnist. And I said, do you remember the guy that was standing outside Celtic Park and labelled you a flop, the journalist? And he was like, I do. And then he went, that was you. that was me. Yeah. And we've laughed about it ever since. And as I say, he's still a Daily Record columnist, but I had a great rapport with him. And just he's a guy who remains kind of friendly to this day. When you text him, he'll always get back. Cracking guy. And I was ever so sad when his father passed away with dementia, and I sent him a text and stuff and telling him that I was sad. And when I left the Daily Record, he sent me a text to say it was a joy and a pleasure working with me, because you get close to someone like you do their column sometimes, and you have to adopt their persona. And Chris is one of these guys who would speak to you, and then you would write the column, but you would send it to him, and then he would make amendments. If you don't like that, change that, or you know. So in terms of being a ghostwriter, Chris actually did all the hard work, you know. So all you did was kind of dictation, you know. You kind of took it down, and that's the way he worked. But sometimes it could go, you know, back to and fro 3 and 4 times, because he didn't like certain things, and which is fine. That's the way I like to work with guys like that. But more often than not, I was one of the lucky ones where it was maybe it went in as, because you listened intently, you become that person, that persona, and you know the way they say things, and you get a kind of handle for it. But yeah, so Chris has been kind of a constant in my Celtic supporting life since he's been with Celtic, or been associated with the club, and I always just kind of laugh. But I've got the I'm here to tame Jers somewhere in a kind of a box. I still laugh at the headline because I think, wow, I don't know if you ever seen it. If you ever seen it, I never really cared, you know what I mean? But yeah, in terms of career as well, it was one of those kind of experiences that a box tick. You know, you want to cover Celtic Rangers matches. I covered 3 Celtic Rangers matches when I was at the Daily Record, and I'm pleased to say played 3, won 3, drawn none, lost none. Celtic won 6-2. They won 3-0 at Ibrox, and they won 3-0 at Celtic Park. So I was a kind of lucky charm in terms of journalistically for Celtic when I covered Celtic Rangers games. I don't know if that's maybe why I didn't get to do many in the end up, and I enjoyed every one of them from a perspective that Celtic won. But when you're a professional and you're sitting there, your demeanour, your persona is very different. It's only after the event that you can enjoy them, and the 6-2 game lives long in the memory of every Celtic supporter that was there. I guess I had the best and worst seat in the house. Best seat that I could see everything, I could write about it clearly, it was magic. Worst seat because I just had to be a strictly professional, and that's what you do. You're locked in those situations, and that takes over because it's your career, it's what you do for a living. But your insides don't stop jumping around when there's mayhem going on around about you. You know, Celtic were 3-0 up, 4-1 up. Larsson's chip over Kloss when he made a fool of Bert Conterman, and that goal is still regarded as some maybe your generation's finest goal against Rangers. You'll find it hard to top that, and I believe I described it as a thing of beauty. So everybody has their memories from that 6-2 game, but Big Chris is the evil genius, I think they named him, didn't they? When he was there. But cracking guy, brilliant droll sense of humour, and just somebody who has been in my kind of Celtic supporting life since 2000 when he signed.
Yeah, I think his mentality was such a big thing for Celtic as well. You needed a winner like him. Obviously, he'd won the league previously with Blackburn Rovers. I think that was under Kenny Dalglish as well. That was back partnership with Alan Shearer up front. It's good to see.
That flop that had won the English Premier League title with Blackburn Rovers, when
I know
you
he was
forget
one of the top scorers in a season as well. It's do you know he did all right up here, so that's the main thing I would say, and it's good to see that he'll be back on our screens next season for the Sky Sports coverage as well. Sure, there'll be plenty of more clips to come from him. Then now we'll move on to number 4. We've only got through 3 of them, and we're 40 minutes in. It's just time flies when you're having fun, I guess. But
I hope you're having fun.
Yeah, I'm having fun. I'm getting an education here. Number 4 says Seville and Larson pull out from 2003. That's what was 20 years ago now. What's your memories of that time? Obviously with Seville and then Henrik Larsson. You were writing about Henrik Larsson for the paper as well.
Seville was just everything you've ever wanted to do as a Celtic supporter, but it breaks your heart to lose. And Larsson's intrinsically linked with that because there's that footage of Larsson behind the UEFA Cup with his silver medal or something, saying I didn't come here for this. It's heartbreaking footage. It's just it makes you want to weep. And my kind of Seville story started. I was at the home legs for Blackburn and Celta Vigo, working at both of them, and then I went to the away leg in Blackburn as a punter. And the Blackburn game was the first Celtic goal in Europe I'd ever seen away. I'd been to numerous trips away, Dortmund, Paris, Cologne, and never seen Celtic score away from home. And so Larsson's chip over Brad Friedel was first goal I'd seen Celtic score in Europe away from home. It was just a wonderful time that he just felt something special was happening. Then I was in America covering the Claymores. They used to send you to Florida on a 10-day junket to speak to Scottish Claymores players. So I was in Florida when John Hartson scored at Anfield in the quarterfinals. And Gordon Waddell will tell you this story. He was a sports editor at the Record at one point, but wrote for the Sunday Mail at that time. And when John Hartson's ball hit the net, I ran down. They were in a pub watching it, the Celtic Supporters Club in Florida. And I kind of ran out the pub and I went straight on the phone to my dad. And I said, do you want to go to the final? Celtic are going to get to the final. This was before they played Boa Vista. And he said to me, don't think I can afford it, son, but you press on, you go ahead if that's what you want to do. I said, no, I want to go with you. I said, you want to do this? You want to start saving up now and see what happens? And he's like, I'm not sure. So they draw Boa Vista in the semis, one each. We're at Parkhead for that game. Larsson scores equaliser. I think he missed a penalty that night as well. Neil Lennon also sadly get booed as well. Just Celtic fans were. I think it was just there was just so much tension and nervousness inside the stadium. It was a horrible night. And then obviously they go to Boa Vista for the second leg in the semi. I'm working at the Record at the time. I've walked to the bookies in Argyll Street to put a bet on Celtic winning the game, but their odds are too short. And I've just went, stuff it. I'll no bother. And on the way out, there's the daily 49s draw. It's called like a daily lottery. I've stuck £2 on 27-7, 10-3, because that was when my niece was born, Shannon, my brother's kid, Shannon. And she was born on the 27th of the 7th at 10-3. Stuck it on, £2, got the ticket back, fine. Walked back to the Record office, and by the time I'd walked back, the draw had been made. And it's like the daily 49s lottery numbers are number 1, 27, 7, 10, 2, 3. So I've dialed the number 10 times. I've wrote the numbers down 10 times, and I've said to Colin Duncan, who was one of the guys who worked in the Record, I says, a woman's going to speak 6 numbers here. I said, can you write them down for me? And he went, yeah. I said, fine. So he wrote them down and he showed me. And I went, do those 5 match that 5? And he burst out laughing and he was like, much have you won? I said, 14.5 grand. And he's like, so he's jumped up and he said to the sports editor at the time, a guy called Alan Thompson, Tony's just won £14,500. And Alan Thompson's like, are you sure? I said, I think so. And he went, go and make sure. He says, go down and make sure this checks out. So I've walked back down. Sure enough, I've walked in and the woman went, it's you, isn't it? We've got you on the CCTV. I said, yeah, it's me. And they're like, how do you want it? Like, just in cash? I'm like, certainly not. I said to we walked about our Gale Street with £14,500 in a swag bag. I said, I'll just take a check. She went, can you come back tomorrow? I said, not a problem. So I phoned the record and I've said, yeah. I says, it checks out. And all I've heard is a champagne cork popping. And my boss saying, come back up. He said, and we'll toast your wee success. He says, right, fine. He went, he says, are you still nervous about tonight? I says, oh God, yeah. So I went back up to the office and Alan and I said to Alan, look, I said, see if Celtic get through, can I take the week off? And he showed me the holiday board. I'd already marked it in, put a big X beside my name with a holiday board. And I went, thanks very much. He says, listen, he says, I hope this stoats for you tonight. I says, fine. So I go home, I've said nothing. We're watching the game. Larsson scores in the whatever minute it was, 73rd minute. Celtic hold out. Again, me and my dad, I'm in my mum and dad's house and jumping, and I mean like jumping about, greeting tears, hugging his knees. We're just like, he's rubbed my head. I says to him, do you want to go? And he said, I told you, he says, I don't think, he says, I'll just leave it. I says, if you're worried about money, I said, there you go. There's your dinner. I said, you're gone. I said, I've won £14,500. So it was just like, the two of us, man, we're just uproar. I mean, like utter uproar, bedlam. We've gone to the local pub called the Garden Hall, and I've sat there, and I wasn't a big drinker, but sat there, had a few sherbets with my dad, and just brilliant, just everything I've ever wanted to do. You know, we're going to a European final, Dad. It's happening. You know, couldn't get tickets for love nor money for the final. Ended up paying £1,000 for two from a friend who was flying to Bella Medina, whatever way you want to say it. And there was a guy selling them in the work. I said, look, take them. I've got the money. I'll pay for them, you know. So I flew my dad and my brother there. They were in the car park. They were in the where the big screens were, because I couldn't get tickets. And I only got those two by chance. And I was there with my then girlfriend at the time, but she's not my wife. But it was just the way it was. So we gone, but I'd said to her, look, I really want to go with my dad. She's just like, no having it. So I said, okay. My dad's like, listen, I'm over here. I'm with your brother. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I know you tried to get tickets. He says, you're off your head paying £1,000 for two. Only did it because I had the money. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. Well, probably wouldn't have had the money to do it otherwise. But so obviously, Celtic play the final. Larsson scores two. Still lose. Heartbroken. I mean, utterly heartbroken. And 20 years on, I'm still not over it. And then a year later, Larsson leaves after a magnificent 7 years. So sitting in the office, and we all know he's leaving, and he scores the 2 goals in the Scottish Cup final against Dunfermline, and he scores the 2 against Dundee United the week before, and gives a tearful interview with Chick Young, and him and Martin O'Neill are standing, and the fans, they show the fans, and they're all in bits. But he's prepared you for it. He told you he was leaving, so fine. We're all fine with that. I've gone in on a Monday after the cup final, and the boss man has walked round. There's another guy called Ian Scott, who was a big Rangers man and a wonderful man. He sadly passed away, and I miss him dearly. And he came round, and as he's walking round, I've shouted, I'm not doing it. No. And he went, what do you mean no? I went, I know what you're going to ask me. He says, what am I going to ask you? I said, you're going to ask me to describe 242 Henrik Larsson goals for this pull-out, aren't you? And he went, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to ask you. I said, oh, come on. And he's like, I'll take you off the rota. It takes as long as it takes. Okay, right. And I did it. It took a wee while. Got to the end of it all, 241. I know he scored 242 in 315 games. Those statistics are in my brain. They'll never leave. Can't find the goal. I've got soccer base, every kind of. I was like, oh no. And it turns out that it was a goal in a Champions League qualifier against St. Pat's. which they didn't really count as part of the season. It would now, but for some reason, so hallelujah, found it great, wrote it, did it, and that was it. So they produced the pull-out, and there's a couple of things, and then there's obviously the 240, every goal number 1, header against Berwick Rangers, or whatever it was, right? It was against Berwick Rangers, so goal number 2, goal number 3, 242 of them, right? I've described a lot. Thinking so, lots of people emailed to say that was brilliant, loved it, great. Celtic supporters still say to me to this day, some of them say, I still remember that, still got it, great. So I got a copy of it laminated in the highly unlikely event that you'd ever meet the King of Kings and maybe get him to sign it. So, as fate would have it, there was Angie, who used to do the kits and the laundry. She sadly passed away through illness, so they had a night in honour of Angie, who was a well-respected figure at the club, and so Henrik Larsson's going to be there, and I'm somehow there as well, and so we go in and we sit, and I'm sitting beside Des McLean, the comedian, who's a Celtic supporter. I don't know if you know Des. Well, I'm sitting beside him. So Henrik Larsson's sitting beside Alan Stubbs. I've got on well with Alan Stubbs because I used to cover the Edinburgh beat for the Record, Hearts and Hibs, and I know Stubbsy really, really well. He's a cracking guy, and I've said to Des, do you think Alan would introduce me to Henrik Larsson? Because I got the laminated, and he went, and I've got the inky, right, the big black marker, and I've said, I'm prepared, it's an hour never shot, and he's like, Tony, you've got to do this. He said, if you don't do this, you will walk away from that night kicking yourself and regretting it. He said, I know he's a man of few words and he doesn't say much, but my goodness, So I thought, okay. So I've approached Alan Stubbs and I said, look, Alan, any chance you could introduce me to the man to your right? I said, I would like him to do something for me. Stubbs was like, no problem. So he waits for a bit in the conversation. So he says, Henrik, this is Tony. Tony's a journalist. He works for the Daily Record. She's good guy, so winking. So Henrik just going, I didn't read the papers, And I said, yeah. And then, so he's looking at it. And I've said, and he went, oh, she didn't read the paper. She said, but I remember this. He said, my son Jordan loved it. She's a great souvenir, right? So I'm like, take me now, magic. And I said, well, can I let you into a secret? He said, yeah. I says, I wrote it. I says, I'm the author of that. I says, that's why it's a bit special to me. I says, and I would just like you to sign it if that's okay. I said, if you don't want to sign it, I said, no problem. I says, it's not what I usually do. I said, I like to leave people in peace. He said to me, you wrote this? I said, yeah. He says, where do you want me to sign it? I said, wherever. He signed every page, right? And as he's walking away, he's like that to Stubbsy, had took it down, Carson. Remember that. And then he's flicking over, and he's like, poor Bert Conterman. And so the three of us just burst out laughing, right? And then he starts to read out certain goals, right? He reads about 2 or 3 of them, So I'm just kind of standing there. It's the most surreal thing ever, like Henrik Larsson reading your description of goals that and I'm just like, do you know what? If it ends tomorrow, great. That's just it. And it's a souvenir. I'm staring at the cupboard where it sits in, and I'm going to get it framed and all that eventually. And I just start to pinch myself. And the club that you support takes you to weird and wonderful places. That's a wonderful place to be, And I've thanked Alan for introducing me. I said, Alan, I feel really bad. It's as if I've used you to get to this man here, He's like, you have. He says, but I'm not caring. He says, that's a cracking souvenir, And I was just like, yeah. And I remember sitting one day
bucket list stuff.
Aye, and I remember sitting in the office one day. It was brilliant. The phone went, right? Hugh Keevan's phone went, mobile phone went. And she was on the landline. Excuse me, she was on the landline to Ali McCoist. I've picked up Hugh's phone and I've said, Hugh's phone, Tony Haggerty speaking. And on the other end of the lines, it's Henrik Larsson. So he's like, there's Hugh there, kind of Bond villain-esque type voice, right? And I'm like, I was like, who's calling? I knew exactly who it was, but I just want to make sure. Henrik Larsson. So I'm like that to Hugh. Hugh, don't care who you're talking to. Get off the phone. Get off the phone. He's like, I'm on the phone to Ali McCoist. I'm like, Ditch McCoist. Henrik Larsson's on the phone. You can't keep the King of Kings waiting. Right? All the guys in the office have gone, like, they're killing themselves laughing. They're like, Tony's going off his nut because he's talking to the King of Kings. So I'm giving it, Henrik, it's Tony. I'll get you to call you back, or I'll get him to, And so they're like, it's the most animated and excited you've ever been in the office. And Henrik's like, no problem. Let him know I've returned his call. And all that. So Shuggy's just sitting there and he's talking away to Super Ali. And the next thing he bangs the phone down and he says, right. He says, I'll phone him. It's fine. So he phones Henrik Larsson. He does a piece of that kind of stuff. And then Shuggy's phone goes again, his landline. And he picks it up. And then he's in hysterics laughing. He puts the phone down. I says to him, who was that? He says, that was McCoist. McCoist is like to him, how dare you hang up the phone on me for Henrik Larsson? He says, how many golden boots has he got? And he hangs up the phone. It's like McCoist has got 2, Larsson's got 1. Right? So I just thought, oh, that's absolutely priceless. Brilliant. But yeah, in terms of, I still pinch myself, Ryan, and I'll pinch myself even more with the number 1, number 2 story. But I've said before, and I've said all along, I'm a humble wee man from East Kilbride, and my job is lead me to meet the most weird and wonderful footballers and cover this wonderful game, and also while supporting this cracking football club. And people say if you to do it all again, would you do it differently? Not in your life. I've loved it. I continue to love it. Hope my enthusiasm comes through in this. My emotion comes through. I wear my heart on my sleeve when it comes to Celtic. Always have, always will. I get passionate about it. I care about it. I just love the football club, and I love that my job has been. I always said that if I wanted to, money's never been an issue or my God. I always wanted to enjoy what I did for a living. I was 21 years at the record almost and loved it. And I love what I'm doing now. I love it even more because there's a personal satisfaction with talking about your team on a daily basis with the likes of yourself. And you keep me young. Guys like yourself keep me young in the head. And your enthusiasm, I sometimes, I've said to my father, watching yourself is like watching me through the looking glass. That way, just the way you are about your club and the way you speak. And yeah, and I learned off many great people, and I continue to learn. I'm never not learning, and I even learn off yourself and young Eden. And yeah, I think if you're open to that, then you'll continually evolve, as you say, both professionally and as a supporter. My brain's still evolving, I think, Ryan. You know what I mean? It's one of those ones, but I've had some wonderful moments concerning this football club, and I'm fortunate that I was writing during that era. And I don't know, I don't really have a favourite piece that I've ever written, but to describe 202 42 Larsson goals and have the great man sign them, then as souvenirs go, it's up there. And the addendum to that is the Rangers man that I spoke about, Ian Scott, my editor at the time, that said to me, do it. And do you know why you should do it? Because you'll love it. Henrik Larsson will love it. And he wasn't wrong. Henrik Larsson did love it. And he signed it for me because of that reason. Him and his son loved it. And I always think Ian as well, whenever I look at it, there's a poignancy there. But it was a Rangers man with a moment of ESP, and he laughed at the fact that I shouted I wasn't going to do it. And he always used to turn to me and say, see, told you you'd love it. And I bowed down to that. I was just like, yeah, you were right. And he's like, are you glad you did it? And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, I'm glad you did it too. He said it's one of the best things he said he's seen in the newspaper as well. So I think things like that just humble you greatly, and you feel privileged and fortunate to do these things and be amongst these people. And I retain that to this day. Always kind of feet in the floor type thing.
Yeah, I knew that Henrik Larsson was going to be a big part of this video, and he certainly
Right.
was. My dad says the same sort of things. He met the great man himself. asked him where the toilet was in Celtic Park. Just as casual as that. I think he met him another time in a pet shop in Glasgow as well. Just a normal guy, but an absolute icon around these parts and in the Scottish game. Just the apex predator of the league, basically. But yeah, that was just an amazing story, and it's amazing that you managed to describe his 240 plus goals. 242 was it?
242 and 315 and
242.
seven seasons. Yeah, so I just
Right off the tongue. Right off the tongue.
easy. I never forget it.
But I'm glad that we're going on to number 3 on the list now. We're an hour in, and we've managed 4. But that's just the way Celtic takes you. So I'm glad that with number 3, it's something that I can maybe speak about as well, because I experienced this myself. But it's obviously your list and you'll talk about it. But the invincible season of 2017, 2016, 2017 under our former and now current manager Brendan Rodgers. Where do you start with this one?
Where do you start? I don't know, Ryan, about you,
Semi-final probably against Rangers.
I don't think, in terms of my Celtic supporting life, I don't think I'll ever have a moment like Tom Rodgick's and the celebration that followed. I was there as a supporter with my dad and my nephew, Matthew, my sister's boy, and he said to me, he said it's the first time he's ever saw me lose it at a football, and I mean lose it, right? And I said this before, and I wrote it in the book. Think Yosemite Sam meets the Tasmanian Devil. I could not tell you
Going
what.
loony.
Aye, going Looney Tunes, right? And only football, and in my head, only Celtic could do that to you. But what a glorious season. What a wonderful season. And to win all 3 domestic trophies without losing a football match is utterly astonishing. It's astonishing, and it will never be done again. You are a kick of a ball, a decision away from losing a cup competition, losing a football match, and everything about that day. It was a chapter in the book, the first book, called Gonna Giza Tricky Ballmister. And the reason it was called that was when I left the Daily Record, it was the last thing I said when I was given the floor after 21 years. I said, say a few words. And I said a few words, and I kind of reminisced about things that I'd seen and what I did. And as I left, I said, I've got one more thing to say. And I just said, thank you for giving us a kick of your ball, mister. And I ended it like that, and it always struck me, and I thought, if I ever write about what I've experienced, that's what I'm going to call it. So I did. And the chapter was obviously on the invincible season. And it was just about that moment where your man picks up the ball and starts slaloming his way through. It's been set to music. There's freeze frames of it all, and the lightning strikes.
Mm-hmm.
Neil Lennon famously said he'd bring back the thunder, but Tom Rodgick brought the lightning. And
He was the thunder from down under.
It sparked utter bedlam. I mean, scenes of joy. I just don't think, an explosion of joy that I don't think I'll ever witness again. And I said probably it's up there in terms of, for our generation, like the Lisbon goals. And I'm talking about sense of the celebration. I know the occasion, it's not as big as a European Cup final, but there was a momentous slice of Scottish football history created that day. And every Celtic supporter, it was just joyous. And it was just joyous to see everybody around you did the same. They just lost it completely. And I was sitting not far from the press areas, and I'm a mild-mannered janitor usually, and I'm quite reserved, even at games when I'm watching as a professional or as a supporter. And I kid you not, my nephew's right. I've just gone off on one. I don't know. Well, I know why, because you just everything hinged on that. Celtic had everything to lose that day. They go 1-0 down. Armstrong scores within minutes, and just everything about that season. it was always the kind of, when people started talking about it, you always thought, it's going to get jinxed, isn't it? You know, the game at Motherwell where Tom Rodgick again, last minute winner in the 4th game, you're 2-0 down, that kind of stuff. You just thought, there's something different about this team. Can they do it? Can they go a whole season? Can they win all 3? Go unbeaten? You know, the Rangers games at Ibrox, stuff like that. I mean, Moussa Dembele doing his thing. The 2 years that they had under Moussa, it just, everything came together. It was just an aligning of stars, and you can talk about it. I mean, it's obviously up there in your favourite seasons, watching Celtic. So you can relate to this. You can relate to that feeling where just everything about you almost in that moment, Tom Roddick's moment, have an outer body experience.
I certainly did.
I think every Celtic supporter had that, because it's just something you never ever thought you'd see. It's something you'll never see again. It won't happen again. No team will win every competition without losing a game. And the enormity of that task and that actual achievement is no wonder it's the Invincibles. It's a wonderful thing. And amongst that celebration, and I'm going bananas and daft and that, there was, when I came down from the ceiling that I was clearly on, I had a moment of real sadness. And the sadness was for the fact that my brother was not there. And every Celtic moment as a kid I've shared growing up was usually with my brother. It was brilliant that I was there with my dad. It was brilliant I was there with my nephew. But I hadn't really... I'd asked him if he wanted to go. He said he couldn't get time off work. That kind of stuff. He works down south, or he stays down south. But I should have forced the issue with him and told him to be there, because this was going to be a unique slice of Scottish football. It's just football history to make it, right? I should have... Hindsight's a great thing, but I wish I had have. And it irks me to this day, because I just wanted him to be there and have that moment with us. He's my older brother. So it kind of pained me a wee bit when everybody was still jumping around, and I had that kind of thought that I wish my brother Danny was here, and I still do, but you can't wind back the clock. So what I did, in one way of trying to make up for it, and this was kind of what I put in the book, the day I get married, December the 14th, 2019, he drove up from down south, and he arrived at my house at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So he had a quick kip. I was getting married at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then, so about 12 o'clock, I said, right, we're going to do what we did the day you get married. He was my best man, I was his best man. We went to see our gran, who sadly passed away, but we went to the site of where our house used to be in Castlemilk. We sat there, we spoke to her, just had a kind of wee moment with her and stuff like that. And then I drove the car, and instead of going home, I drove to Celtic Park. So he's like, where are we going? I says, we're going somewhere. I says, just bear with me. So eventually clocks that we're heading to Celtic Park. So walking up Celtic Way, and I look, and I know exactly where he's stood. So I've looked up, and I said, look at that. And he went, yeah. And my brother had a saying, and he always puts it on Facebook. I just laugh, because life's great, innit? Life's always great with Danny, right? Doesn't matter if it's rotten or whatever. He always tells people, put pictures up, life's great, innit? So we called him Big Dan. So he's looking at the gold star at Celtic Park above it, and he's like, I said, why are we here? I said, look up. And then he looked up, and then I said, look down. And he looked down, and excuse me, I'd bought my stone. And he said to Big Dan, life's great, innit? And he kind of burst out crying as well. We just kind of had a moment. And I said, that's my gift to you for not being there. And he's a big guy, big kind of strong guy, big baldy guy. And he just kind of collapsed in my arms, and he wept as well. And I just said, I just wish you were there. And he was like, so do I. He says, but I'm here now, for your big day. And I said, aye, good. So it just kind of, well, you can see how it gets me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
still there. That was my way of making up for it. And I said in the book, what did I say? I said, you might not be an invincible, I says, but the stone makes someone immortal, and I can live with that now. And that's the way I kind of finished that chapter. And he wasn't expecting it, and it was something that was important to me, and I still wish to this day that he was at that football match. As you can see, it kind of hit me right in the
That's what
gut
it does,
there.
though. This is what Celtic does to people.
And
This is
I
it's
kind of
more than a football team. It is a way of life, and it just gets intertwined with personal relationships and that, and you share it with people. But that's just totally normal to feel like that.
you talk about family, yeah. So I have 3 things that are important to me in life, Ryan. Family, family, family in that order, and then Celtic. But
Mm-hmm.
when the two of them are intertwined and interlinked, as you say, then it's there's not a feeling like it, and it's that was something that meant a lot to me and means the world to him. He'll still send me pictures of it every now and again when he's having a moment. He'll just say, "Cheers, wee man." I just bust out laughing. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, wow, that was that just kind of hurt me there a wee bit.
That's what happens.
I just
It's the
yeah.
Magnificent Seven. It's the Magnificent Seven. This is
I
it.
say number 5 of the Magnificent Seven, isn't it? But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, is it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, just that season, phenomenal,
I
absolutely phenomenal.
mean,
We don't even think we've spoke about Scott Sinclair's. I
yeah,
mean, the debut,
all
the
that.
goals that he scored in that season. It was just what a season. Brendan Rodgers, and he's back now, obviously, and we're looking forward to hopefully more good times under him. But that first season, it's going to be very, very difficult to top that first season. It was just an incredible force of nature, almost the way
Yeah,
the squad just went from strength to strength. I mean, Moussa
you
Dembele came in on a compensation fee, and he became this colossus up front for Celtic. That was just the fear of Glasgow.
you get back to that Billy McNeill comment about the fairy tale nature to the club, and there was a fairy tale nature to the club to that year, Brendan
Massively.
Rodgers' first year, and the stars aligning and it being decreed that you would win all 3 domestic trophies without losing a game.
It's crazy.
Unparalleled, unprecedented, and it'll be it'll never be done again. No chance. I just can't see it happening.
I hope we jinx it and it does happen again. I mean, I know, you know,
Yeah.
we could Celtic can certainly go for it. Yeah, it's what a season that game against Aberdeen, especially to seal the invincible treble, best day of my life, bar none. I remember falling down rows of stairs because I was celebrating that much, tears in my eyes.
Oh yeah.
I had it was next season's top that they'd released before the final, that Lisbon sort of anniversary one from New Balance. I remember taking it out of the packaging on the way to the game. I had actually travelled from East Kilbride that day as well. I was coming
Yeah.
back, and then I was going into Hampden. I was meeting my dad in town, then going into Hampden. But just special days, special days. It's
Oh.
an incredible season. We'll get 2 more to talk about though before we finish up. We'll get 2 stories to finish off. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we've had about 5 stories so far, at least. But you know, it's been
Yeah.
really, really interesting to hear about this. These moments that you've had in Celtic, and you're so lucky to have all these great
Oh,
moments. And I
don't
mean,
believe it.
we've still to talk about probably your favourite guy in football.
Ever.
I know number 2. If you know Tony at all, you'll know that he absolutely loves Diego Maradona. He'll swear by him. He'll talk about him in line with the greats, in which he was. But you've got a story about Maradona in 2008, I believe, in Celtic Park. There is a Celtic connection with regards to this story, but I'll let you take the floor.
This is just the most surreal and bizarre thing that's ever happened to myself. The Daily Record bought a trophy, and it was a ball cupped in a hand, and they inscribed it a glass trophy, and they inscribed on it, to Diego Maradona, thank you for the 2 goals against England from all the people of Scotland. So Diego Maradona had become the Argentina manager. Their first training session, or their first game was against Scotland. Their first training session was going to be at Celtic Park. Now, they'd flown to Glasgow, and the security around Maradona was frightening, so nobody could really get near him. And, so we had this trophy. They wanted somebody to present it to him. So they said to me, Tony, go to Celtic Park. Again, gym trainer saying, Tony, get to Celtic Park, present this to Maradona, get a picture. The usual drill. If you don't get them, don't come back. That kind of thing. So live with that kind of pressure. Which it was his way of saying, just do the job. That so fine. It was his way of motivating you. Great. So there's only one other guy that I know that loves Maradona, and he was my mate James Quinn. So I've driven, and I've said to him, I phoned him. I've said, so Jammer, as he's known, I said, Jammer, you never guess where I'm headed. He says, where? I says, Celtic Park. I says, they want me to present a trophy to Maradona. I says, but I'll get nowhere near him. And James is like, Tony, you need to make sure you get near him. Even if you have to hit him on the back of the head with a trophy, you need to get near him. You need to make him accept this, right? Again, one of those moments, if you don't do it, you'll come away, what if, and you'll want to play it all over again in your head. He's like, you're going to do this, aren't you? And I went, yeah. So by the time I spoke to James, I thought, I've got nothing to lose here. Diego Maradona's going to get this trophy. Go inside Celtic Park. And so there's a throng of journalists congregated, and a few of them had been I think he'd given a press conference when he arrived in Scotland, because my father had taken me to see Scotland play Argentina in '79. So that's where the love affair began. And he scored his first goal ever against Scotland, his first Argentina goal against Scotland, 3-1. They hammered Scotland that day, and he was just absolutely brilliant. So from then on, I just loved him, followed his fortunes, and, the Napoli story is just incredible. And so I will swear that he's the greatest of all time. And the reason I say he's the greatest of all time is I implore people to go and watch Claudio Gentile's marking job on him in the 1982 World Cup finals. Claudio Gentile fouls him 23 times. It's a world record for any footballer being fouled. It equates to a foul every 4 minutes, right, when you include injury time. And you're not just talking niggly ones, you're talking leg crunchers, career enders, the whole lot. And I think Claudio Gentile get booked in the 89th minute or something. Maradona does a handstand as if, come on, or a headstand. And it's the most brutal exhibition of the dark arts of defensive football I've ever seen in my life. Yet that's what Maradona put up with his whole career. And I stress that it's my opinion, but what a wonderfully gifted footballer. So I was as excited as they come that I thought that I could maybe see him or just say anything to him, So we go to Celtic Park, and we positioned it so the team are on the park training. So I positioned myself at the mouth of the tunnel. I'm thinking he's got to come back this way. Let's see what happens. So sure enough, they finished their session. They're coming off, and everybody to a man. So I'm screaming, Diego, Diego, Diego. And he's walking past, and he walks straight past us. So I said, Diego, dos goles, Inglaterra, Mexico, 86. Right? Broken bits of Spanish that you know. So he turns round. And I didn't think he spoke English, but he sort of says, for me? I said, for you, a gift, a gift. So he starts walking towards me, and I'm like, he's going to take this. He's literally going to take this trophy out as a gift from the people of Scotland, people of Scotia, to you. There you go, a gift. So he's walking towards me, and I think, oh, your beauty. And just as he gets near me, a steward comes across, and I'm like, no way. And I've thought, sod it, and I've just jumped over the kind of tunnel bit, and I've lashed out with my leg, and I've caught him. Something that rings with Dennis Laws, right? So he kind of winces like that, I've handed the trophy to Diego Maradona. He's holding it, and out of nowhere, my Daily Record photographer, a guy called Dominic Kokoza, it just goes bang. It's the flashlight. And when you see the picture, it's not the greatest picture, but it's a picture of Maradona holding this trophy.
Is that the book cover?
That's the book
No.
cover, right? And the chapter's called Perfect 10 Imperfect Picture. And I love it for that fact, because there's a story behind it. And I looks at Dominic, and Dominic says, "I've got it." And he starts running, and the steward comes towards me again, and honestly, bedlam breaks loose, right? The police and all, the police and all that are involved, right? It's like, he's kicked me and all that, and the police are like, well, and other journalists, there was a journalist from The Sun, Ronnie Mackay, who sadly is no longer with us either, a young guy, Ronnie. Diego Maradona's just kind of standing there. So Ronnie brings out the Argentina jersey with the black ink marker. He's bringing out books. He's getting pens. So Diego's sitting there signing away, happily signing away. And so I'm like that to him, thank you. And he's like, no problem and all that. And I was just like, wow, I did it. And so it appeared on the back page of the record as well. And when I left, they gave me that as a kind of front page. And it's like Maradona, it was the headline. And and the reason I bring that up is because it happened at my favourite place, Celtic Park. And I don't really idolise football. There's footballers that I've loved. Ken Dalglish was my first kind of idol, but I was a kid then. And then Maradona came along, and it became instant hero worship. And it's the only player that I've afforded hero worship status to ever. I've liked players, I've kind of loved them, but I've never been all in on them like Maradona, and I'll defend them to the hilt when people say he was this, that, or the next thing. Lived through that era of Maradona. And again, there's a humble wee guy for East Kilbride with a picture of the greatest footballer in the world at one point in the 80s. And I just kind of look at it and I think, wow. And I look at the kind of the life that has been led through journalism, and I say I've never made money, my God, but I'm rich in football memories and the people I've met, the things I've did, and you can't put a price on that, Ryan. It's just to me, it means the world. That I don't really care about other things, that I've kind of lived a decent life, and football's been good to me, but I've always appreciated it, and I've always loved it. I love doing what I do. I love the written word. The transition to kind of online journalism and stuff, and doing videos like this. Not saying I found it difficult, but I could always kind of, writing was my thing. Words were my currency, and I've always loved that. But I enjoy this part as well, and but I hope that enthusiasm comes through in these videos when I talk about Celtic, and when I write about them. There's a passion there, and there's a real kind of respect for the craft and the profession, or I certainly try to. But I mean, you can never. How can you script something like that in your life, that you will meet Maradona, speak to Maradona, and get the worst picture ever beside Maradona, which still makes me laugh to this day. It's as you say, it's the front of the book cover, and I wouldn't, and I get kind permission from the Daily Record because it's their copyright, but they said to me, "Look, it was your moment." So, and I remember going back in the car and I phoned James. I said I did it, and he just said, "I know you would." And he hung up the phone, and he phoned me the next day, and he went, "Who?" He says, "People are saying, who's the guy with Maradona?" And I was just like laughing. I was like, yeah, very good. But I think he, in a way, was kind of proud of the fact that I did that, and I made sure that for better or for worse, you got a Maradona memory. And as I say, with it being at Celtic Park, it was just something that I don't know. I find that being asked to do this, I'll talk about it because I'm asked to do it, but it's not something I ever bring up or tell unless I'm asked about it. And to give you an example, I was in a nightclub in East Kilbride not long after it, and a guy came up to me and went, "Are you the guy that met Maradona?" I said, "I am." And I thought, this goes two ways, doesn't it?
Very much so.
And he went, "No, it's all right, mate." He went, "Can I shake the hand that shook the hand of God?"
Brilliant. Oh, brilliant.
And I thought, what a line that is, right? And I went, I says, "Mate, my name's Tony." I says, he went, "I know, but you've touched greatness." It's like, I'm just trying to rub. I says, "I hope that greatness rubs off on you, and I hope it rubs off on me." And I burst out laughing. And I thought, wow, that's the kind of appeal of Maradona to every football generation. He has touched so many lives, and and it's funny when he passed away. I was contacted by a lot of people who said their first thought when he passed away was how I would feel, friends and stuff and people. And I thought that's quite nice, that your life was somehow linked with a real legend and a hero like that. They say never meet your heroes, but I'm glad that I met my hero that day, and he still remains my only kind of real iconic football hero that I've ever had. I say I've loved players, I love teams, I've loved managers, but in terms of hero worship, it was always Diego Armando Maradona. Hence the A Haggerty 10.
Number 10 for Maradona. Obviously, his nation won the 2022 World Cup. I think they had him on their side for sure.
Yeah.
Or in their thoughts. So they were running through brick walls for Maradona's memory. I think. Yeah, that's arguably, well, not even arguably, one of the greatest players ever, and you got to meet him. So I'm very, very jealous in that sense. And it's a great picture as well. You might say it's not a great picture, but it's Maradona. It doesn't matter.
The thing about the picture is it's not posed for, it's not stilted, it's a moment in time. I mean, that is genuinely a moment. I get it's real, and that's what I love about it. And I just Dominic Kokoza, who was the record photographer, I said, I mean, honestly, he appeared like an apparition, and my shoulders were just like sore from laughing. "I've got it, Johnny." I mean, he's legging it. He's off. He's back to the record to get this onto the, to get it printed for the first edition, and I still laugh at that. And a lovely lad was Dominic as well, and we still laugh. And yeah, he'll whenever we have a discussion sporadically, we'll talk about that, and it'll inevitably come up. And his role in it cannot be underestimated either. And I tip my hat and lift a glass to Dominic in times like that as well, because as I say, without him being there as well, I mean, he just clearly saw what was happening, even with the intervention of the steward. And you can see in the front cover that I think the steward's in the background as the picture's been taken. He's kind of like, one of the ones. But yeah, a surreal moment in life again, Ryan. I mean, that's what I'm privileged, I'm honoured, and I feel a bit blessed in these kind of moments, So, and I'm humbled as well. So there you go.
And that was number 2. So there's one that's bigger than this, or more poignant, you could possibly say. But I've got on my notes just for number 1 in your top Celtic memories. I know that second. I know the Maradona one wasn't really to do with Celtic, but it was in Celtic Park. There's still that Celtic connection. Yeah. You wouldn't have had it any other way or in any other location. But at number 1, you've got the Bobby Murdoch story. But Bobby Murdoch, European Cup winner with Celtic, Jock Stein's favourite ever player, played for Middlesbrough as well. 507 appearances, 110 goals in all competitions. Obviously, I wasn't around at the time that he was playing, but you hear about this guy. He's just a legend in every sense of the word. So I'll let you take the floor again.
This might get me again as well. Now, Bobby Murdoch became a friend of mine because I was asked to appear on like panel nights, Q&A nights. So there's the likes of Bobby Murdoch, Jimmy Johnson, Bertie Auld, and the pantomime villain for the Daily Record, Tony Haggerty, but he was Celtic minded, that kind of thing. And I used to always say, between us, there's 3 European Cup winners medal and a 1984 Scottish Cup Select Runners-Up medal. You can work out who's got what. that kind of thing. So that kind of self-deprecation used to ingratiate yourself to people. But I always used to look along the line and say, I've no idea why I'm here. I say beside these legends, but I'll answer questions openly and honestly and humorously, as I say on the briefing and that. So we did quite a lot of these Q&As, and so that was a kind of Ronnie Simpson used to do them as well, and so it was kind of Jinky, Bobby Murdoch, Bertie, and Ronnie. Jim Craig used to do them too, and you get kind of friendly with these guys, So what a thrill that was! The best people ever, the most humble guys in the world, and there's that urban myth, isn't there, that when Celtic won the European Cup, I think all the players got like what amounted to £750 or £1,000, whatever it was. And when Manchester United won it the following year, all the players get a pension for life. Don't know how true that is, but this team are still getting lauded 60 years after the event, and more than 60 years now, and 60 plus years. So, but the enormity of it still hits home. That group, that cluster play. The greatest line ever was by McIlvanney, who said Celtic and Jock Stein won the European Cup with a Glasgow district select. There you go. It just encapsulates it, doesn't it? And so this team, for those who were old enough to remember it and are fortunate enough to have been to Lisbon, it is the benchmark, isn't it? It's the benchmark by which the modern Celtic are measured, and I never knew this team either. I never got the chance to see them play, but I was privileged to meet these guys in later life, and a finer group of men you'll never come across in your life, and just genuine, humble, great people. I did an interview for Celtic Way with John Clark on May the 25th, and he's just, what a wonderful man. I could have listened to him all day, so, and he spoke and he told me about all the Lisbon team and all that, and you just, they are everything that's wonderful about Celtic. So I'd grown up listening to my father talk about Stein. Stein was his hero, to the point where my family bought my father a stone outside Celtic Park, and he's just I think he's to the left or right of Jock Stein. And my mum was like, what do we put on the stone? I said, leave it to me. And my dad's name's Danny. I just put Danny, you're immortal now, and leave it at that. I said, and so when he got the stone, he was quite choked up and emotional about that, and so he loves that. So that was his idol, certainly as a manager, certainly people, Celtic connection. So we do a Q&A, and it's myself, Bertie Auld, who I love to bits, Bobby Murdoch, Jimmy Johnson, another hero, just a great guy, wonderful guy. Sadly, all three are no longer with us. More's the pity, but it's in the Brazen Head and the Gorbals, and so a quaint little boozer, as they say. So I'm thinking, okay, Brazen Head might be a kind of hard audience, especially when you're introduced as Tony Haggerty from the Daily Record at that point in time. But hey, I was used to that. But you very quickly get them on side and on board when you talk. So thought nothing of it. So we're driving up, and for an extra layer of security, I always took my father to these things. Always, because he loved his football, loved Celtic, and he just loved the fact that I was involved. So he's always been with me, and even if it got a bit, if at times maybe I had to drag me out of the place, but it never ever happened. But so he was there that night, and we're driving up, and we're kind of chatting away, and he said, who's on the panel? I said, myself. I said, Bertie Auld, Jimmy Johnson, Bobby Murdoch. Fine. Now, I'm in my late 20s or 30s, late 20s, early 30s, whatever I was, might even have been approaching my 40s. And he said to me, Do you know Bobby Murdoch was my favourite ever player, son? No. Wait, what? Say that again. He said, Bobby Murdoch's my favourite ever player, ever in Celtic's history. I said, Dad, how come all my life, I says, we've been watching Celtic and you never mentioned this? He said, have I never mentioned it? I was like, nah. I went, well, okay. So I'm like, I says, oh, great. So my mind's flicked back to 1976, 77, and I'm at Shawfield and I'm running my dinky cars up Shawfield wooden benches, and Celtic have scored and I've heard the roar, and I've said to my dad, do you think Kenny Dalglish has scored for Celtic? Do you think Celtic are winning? And so we go to Celtic from then on in. We are bona fide Celtic supporters, and through my job I've also met Kenny Dalglish. Don't meet your heroes, King Kenny, aptly named, great guy, and there was, so we were, I was a guest at McDonald's and he was hosting the table when Scotland played West Germany. Kenny Miller scored. I was at Scotland playing Germany anyway, don't know if it was West Germany, and Kenny Miller scored an equaliser, and I was sitting beside Kenny Dalglish in the padded seats, and we were jumping around and going absolutely mental. And he was kicking every ball for Scotland, the fiercest, most ferocious Scotland supporter ever. And I was just kind of jumping around, and that way you're like, I'm jumping about with Kenny Dalglish. It's just like weird. Great. Another one of those pinch yourself moments. And at that moment, I was just kind of looking around and I was thinking, can you see me, Dad? Can you see me? Yeah, that's one of my heroes. You know, this is all because of you. Thank you. I do what I do because of you. You've introduced me to football, introduced me to Celtic. I'm standing celebrating a Scotland goal with Kenny Dalglish. I hope you can see me, type thing. I know he wasn't there, but I know, and he wasn't hadn't passed away. I was just thinking that in my head.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, said you helped introduce me to my hero. So as we're walking in, I'm thinking, I'm going to be introducing my dad to his hero here. I thought, what a nice way to bookend football life. And I was just thinking, if I'm made redundant tomorrow or it all ends, magic, you know. And people have asked me throughout my career, what's the best interview you've ever did, or what's the best thing about journalism? Or is there? I don't have a best interview. I don't have a piece that I value above others, but I have a moment, and that moment's walking into the Brazen Head and saying to my dad, this is Jimmy Johnston, this is Bertie Auld. I said, and that there is Bobby Murdoch. My dad saying to me, I know who they are, son. You're all right. So kind of busted laughing. It's kind of broke the ice. And Bobby Murdoch stood up. And he went, what's your name, sir? And I said, sorry. I says, that's Danny. He's like, Danny, me and you'll walk to the bar and we'll buy a pint. And the two of them walked to the bar, right? And I just kind of look and I'm thinking, that's my dad with his hero. My job has allowed me to do that. And he just kind of puts his arm, Bob Miller puts his arm around him, the two of them kind of, and he's talking to him like it's his best mate, right? So I'm just kind of watching this and I'm trying to hold it together. I still try to hold it together when I talk about it. And I'm like, wow, right, okay. So I disappear. I just go to a cubicle, I lock the cubicle, and I just sit there and I burst out crying. I'm just like, wow, okay, right, control yourself, you know, get hold of your emotions. You're going to have to do a Q&A. So I walk
Job
back.
at hand.
Yeah, professional all the time, you know. I walk back out. There's my dad sitting in the middle of the three of them, giving it this and that. And the three of them are just kind of looking like Bobby Murdoch, Bertie Auld, and Jimmy Johnston. And Bertie Auld can talk, right? And I'm like, he's holding court amongst these guys, you know what I mean? Like it was the most natural thing in the world, right? And I say to myself, what other occupation, profession allows you that utter privilege and honour of, your dad being responsible for you meeting one of your early heroes and you being responsible for introducing him to his all-time football hero. And Graham Souness said he learned a lot from Bobby Murdoch. Said he was
At Middlesbrough.
at Middlesbrough. Said he taught him everything he knows about football. And on the Middlesbrough website, I believe there is only one footballer who they rate as world class, and it's Bobby Murdoch.
Wow.
And Bobby Murdoch was, to me, a world class footballer, but he was also a world class person. The way he treated my dad, you would have thought my dad was a member of the Lions. The way he sat with those guys that night,
It's amazing.
and I again, it formed a chapter in the book. It's Celtic related. How do you top that? Name me an interview that could top that, or words that would top that moment in life. You know, I struggle.
Mhm.
I everything that you love in life, i.e. in terms of, you know, a pastime, a hobby, your profession is football. And my dad introduced me to football, he introduced me to Celtic, and the journey that we've both been on in terms of career and things we've did and people we've met, you know, I include them in most things, as you would. And so you'll never beat that for me. I don't want to beat that. If something comes along and beats that, it's going to have to be a top trump in it. And I can't really think of anything that would top trump that. And that moment where he just puts his arms on his shoulder and they walk to the bar, it's just like,
It's like a
okay.
movie moment, almost like a
Aye,
movie
you know,
moment, like caught and captured.
yeah, and you could write a movie script of it, because it's just something that's, I was saying, it's so personal, as you tell everybody in the kind of wider sphere. And I wrote those thoughts down because you're in those kind of moments, you're just, I don't know, you're just a fan of the football club, and these are special people in your eyes, and they remain special people. And as I said there, they might have been a world class team, but they were world class people, and they gave my dad a touch of it, and I'm forever grateful for that experience. Still don't know what I was doing alongside them in Q&As. I think that's called jersey filling or making up the numbers, or was it
Totally.
Didier Deschamps water carrying, whatever.
That was exactly the reference I was going to make.
You know, that kind of thing. But they were always enjoyable nights, and Bertie All's a force of nature, a raconteur
Mhm.
extraordinaire. But Bobby and Jinky were, I cherish those nights. There's something that again, it's not something that you run about shouting about, but when you're asked and you have a platform, a wise man once said to me, and it's wisdom beyond any wisdom that I would ever have. He once said to me, Tony, these stories are to be shared. They're not yours. He says, and only by sharing them will you reclaim ownership of them. It sounded a bit deep and profound, but I knew exactly what he meant.
Yeah.
And I've kind of did that ever since I left the Daily Record. I wrote the first book. It was a bit cathartic. I wrote it down during lockdown, and people seemed to enjoy it because there were personal stories, and you know, some kind of up close with, you know, some famous footballers and all that kind of story behind the story type thing. Or, you know, got to kind of a wee insight to a particular person. And I'm glad I did it. It's one. Well, it's not say one, but I've gained a kind of an audience through that, because I'm back doing a career that I love, because I left it to go into teaching and I hated it. I went back to Glasgow University to do teaching English to secondary school students during COVID, during lockdown, and I hated that experience of Zoom lectures and never actually setting foot inside Glasgow Uni. But through that, I ended up doing a podcast called A Celtic State of Mind, and appeared on other podcasts as well, just because I was sharing some stories about my experiences in journalistic life. And through that, I ended up back in a career that I thought I was going to have to give up. And I'm the most extremely grateful and humble person there is, and again, I get back to it. You're starting out. I think there's both a love in what we do, isn't there? We cherish it and we try to bring our A game every day, and when we're speaking on these broadcasts. And yeah, I hope that's been a magnificent 7. It's very hard to break it all down. I'll come to you when you're 50, Ryan, and ask you for the same. You can break down your 7 moments, although the Invincible season will still be somewhere up there. But I hope you're telling me, and I hope I'm still around, and you're telling me that the European final and such is your
Take it.
is your guy correct. But yeah,
I want the Invincible treble to be in the honourable mentions at the start. That's when I know it'll be a good list.
yes, exactly. If that's in your honourable mentions at the start, then so be it. But yeah, there you go. An hour and 45 minutes. Loved every bit of that. I don't know why I got really emotional about my brother there. But
It's what
hey,
happens. But
yeah, it
thank you
happened.
very much. Yeah,
Not
thank
a
you very
problem.
much for sharing all of that with us. I certainly learned a lot from it. I'm sure the rest of the viewers have as well. Even a wee trip down memory lane for some of the older viewers, they'll be able to sort of reconnect with some memories that may be lost over the years. But yeah, that's us an hour and 46 minutes into it. We get seven great stories about your career and your life in Celtic, and that's still going. You'll still have more to add to that as the years go on, and I'm looking forward to hopefully doing another 7 list, another magnificent 7 list. If you can get to 14, that'd be absolutely brilliant. Just before we finish off, if you enjoy what we do, such as the briefings, and you enjoy the channel with sit down videos like this, there's more of that. If you subscribe to the Celtic Way website, you can support the top quality football journalism that Tony and I both do. It's covering the club that you love. If you visit www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe, you get scouting videos, you get analytical pieces, opinion pieces, big features, big interviews. Tony with some of his heroes that he's talking to. That's an amazing contacts book he's got. Every week he's hearing about different people that he spoke to. So if that tickles your fancy, then please go to that website down below and subscribe. But Tony, thank you very much for joining me for this sit down interview or deep dive into your Celtic supporting career and life. Is there anything else you want to add before we finish off?
No, absolute pleasure. I hope people enjoy it. I love talking about it there. I still see myself as a work in progress, even at 51, Ryan, you know what I mean? But hey, there you go. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it. And if you did enjoy it, let us know.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed the video as well, please give the YouTube channel a subscribe as well. That means you'll be notified whenever Tony and I and Aidan as well go live for morning briefings, and when videos come up just like this. We'll have more videos coming in the coming weeks, transfer videos of people coming in and how they'll fit into Brendan Rodgers' side. So yeah, there's plenty more to come on the YouTube front, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with that. But all that's left for me to say is thank you very much, Tony. Thanks for joining me.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
And thanks to everyone for watching. We'll see you in the next video.